Hello there. Sorry this video is a little late, but as you can maybe tell from my voice and appearance, I've not been feeling my best this last couple of weeks, having a horrendous virus. But in all that, I did manage to get out and see Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, on the opening night with a bunch of very good friends. And I thought I'd use this video to give my thoughts on it. It will be spoiler heavy, so don't see the video if you haven't watched the movie first. While I think The Last Jedi was probably the better movie, I enjoyed this one a lot. It had a lot of the stuff that I really like in it. Like, the action is the way I like it. The Jedi training is the way I like it. The flashback of Luke and Leia training is just literally all I wanted from this trilogy. The voices of the ghosts, okay, I'd have liked to have seen Anakin and Obi-Wan, but they more than made up for it by having the voices of Mace and Qui-Gon and Ahsoka and Luminara, who was one of my favourite Jedi from the prequels. If you told me that she was going to be making a cameo in this trilogy, I would never have believed it. The broad strokes of the characters' storylines I approved of as well. I think the idea of Rey going from wanting a significant bloodline to being satisfied without one, then discover a need to disavow her actual bloodline and prove herself separate from it was a decent next step. How they dealt with Kylo Ren, it wasn't what I had in mind, but I actually felt it really worked. And the notion of him voluntarily and knowingly giving up his life to bring back the future of the Jedi, I felt he earned his oneness with the Force for that. Now, some little nitpicks. I do feel like this film threw The Last Jedi under the bus a little bit. I know a lot of people will say that they hated The Last Jedi and they're glad that it was a departure from that, but the thing is, The Last Jedi didn't really throw out anything The Force Awakens set up. In fact, most of the things that upset people about The Last Jedi were things picked up from The Force Awakens. Like, for instance, Luke's characterization was a necessary outcome of the previous film, establishing that Luke blamed himself for what had happened and walked away from it all. And that included the rising threat of the First Order. Like, Rian Johnson could have come up with his own sort of MacGuffin-y reason for Luke to be on that island, but he'd have to have been doing something so important that it would justify him ignoring the planet-killing threat of Starkiller and just carrying on while he knew his best friend was about to be murdered by his nephew. So really, what The Last Jedi did was it took the events of The Force Awakens and said, the only characterization of Luke that makes sense is that he's voluntarily cut himself off from everything because he believes it's for the best. It's the same with Rey's parentage. That I thought all of her arc throughout The Force Awakens was of letting go of her past family life on Jakku, saying that the path you seek isn't behind you, it's ahead. And The Last Jedi took that arc and continued it, with Rey learning to kind of forge her own way and not pining after a family that had abandoned her and was never coming back, and accepted her own space in society and that kind of thing. So The Last Jedi never directly contradicted The Force Awakens, I don't think. I think The Rise of Skywalker does pretty clearly contradict The Last Jedi. And I don't think it needed to. Like, when Rey is revealed to be Palpatine's granddaughter. Okay, J.J. Abrams, do you know what you just did when you did that? You forced me to imagine the prospect of Emperor Palpatine post-Revenge of the Sith procreating. That is in my brain now. It's there, it's not going anywhere. Go and stand in the corner and think about what you've done. But in all seriousness, I do feel that the reveal undercuts the idea that the Force chose Rey because of the kind of person that she was. I think that was one of the sweetest messages to come out of this trilogy, to come out of the saga, in quite a while, really. And I don't feel like it was entirely, like they could have said she was a descendant, or they could have even done something like this. Have it that when Vader and Palpatine died, their power returned back into the Force, but then Ben Solo was born and inherited Vader's strength. And because Anakin had brought balance to the Force, the Force balanced Ben's new power by granting Palpatine's Force strength to Rey, so that they would be balanced. And that is why Palpatine needs to kill Rey to claim his power back from her. So that way you keep Rey being born out of nothing, you keep her value being hers alone, you keep Palpatine needing to kind of claim Rey as his heir because she has his Force power, and you can bring in the prophecy of bringing balance to the Force and actually explain what it means, because I don't think any of the films have actually done that, and now I don't think they ever will, which is a bit sort of strange, really. Also, Rose. It's like, when Kelly Marie Tran appeared in Chicago and got the standing ovation and all these chants and cheers, it was one of my proudest moments as a Star Wars fan, it really was. And J.J. Abrams said that the thing he was most grateful to Rian Johnson for was casting Kelly Marie Tran as Rose Tico. But then you see this movie, and Sir hardly appearing in this film. It's really strange. It's like they introduce a bunch more Resistance characters as well, including Meriadoc Brandybuck is in this movie. And none of them really do anything. They don't really have anything to do. You don't even hear Rose's musical theme from the last film. That's sort of how minimal a role she plays. And what's really strange is the ideals that she represented are given such a prominent focus in this movie. It's just strange that she doesn't have that much of a voice in it. It's like when there's so many other characters sort of crammed into this film, it's strange that the one that arguably voiced the theme of the film the strongest in the previous entry has so little to do in this one. One last little thing that really, it's a stupid little thing that to get worked over, but Luke lifting the X-Wing, it's a great moment, but that X-Wing was in bits. Like, it was charred and it was scorched up, it was stripped down, like that he was using bits of it to make doors and antennae in his hut with. It was not in a flyable condition, and now in this movie he lifts it up and it's in one piece. It still works, it still flies after spending 7 years underwater. And it's like, was Luke's Force Ghost sort of putting it together over the last year or so, getting ready for this? Maybe, I don't know. Because the other thing is, if the X-Wing was flyable all the time, Luke didn't really need to die in The Last Jedi. And that's one problem that I do have with that movie this day. I really wish Luke hadn't died. And now they're saying, well, he didn't need to project himself to Crate. He could have just lifted the X-Wing and flown. Which he couldn't, because the X-Wing was in bits in that movie. But, yeah, I know that's a very silly little nitpick, but it sort of took a moment that I was ultimately fine with in The Last Jedi with the torched X-Wing. And it sort of made a problem out of it, because now I'm wondering if Luke needed to die, or if he could have just done as Rey did and flown the X-Wing away. I only point this out because so much of the ideas that are carried on from The Last Jedi carry on really well. Like, I was perfectly fine with the clarifying Snoke as a Sith spawn. I think that's what it is. Like, there's a precedent in the old canon that the Sith would create these Force-strong, abominable life forms out of the dark side, and I think that's what Snoke is implied to have been in this film. And that makes a lot of sense, like his similarity to Palpatine, his appearance, his sort of lack of strength compared to what he claimed it to be, and that checks out pretty well. And I never, as I said before, like in my reviews of The Force Awakens, I said I would like Snoke to die in the next film because I sort of feel like he will be Palpatine Mark II if he's carried on. And I sort of feel very vindicated by the realisation that he was a creation of Palpatine. The evolution of the Force bond was a welcome addition. I kind of, that was one of the most interesting and clever parts of The Last Jedi, and they kind of took it and ran with it a little bit more and really used it for some really nice little payoffs in this one, with the sort of Force part, sort of teleporting things. It kind of got a bit like wow, how has this power never been used before? But it led to some cool little moments. And one of the sort of the problems I had with The Last Jedi was the idea of Luke dying from an overuse of the Force. But this film really kind of doubled down with that by showing Leia and Ben Solo both going out through Force exertion. And I kind of feel more sort of at peace with the way Luke went out, knowing that it's now been established as a sort of like, as a recurrent method of death for Jedi characters. All the stuff with Leia, considering what an impossible situation they had, I think they did a phenomenal job with her. I think the thing of her being a kind of acting Jedi Master to Rey was an adorable little touch that I really liked. And I think it was the right call to give the characters a chance to grieve for her. Like Chewie and Finn and Poe's reactions to her passing was a very emotional moment, and I like the fact that they showed her and Luke together in the Force again. I think that was a very perfect way to honour Carrie Fisher. Although I'm gonna probably lose a few of you with this one, but could we not have had Force Ghost Han in that last scene? Before any of you try and say, oh, but he's not a Jedi, but that's not how the Force works, you think I'd give a toss? Like, it could have had all three of our first heroes together and at peace for all eternity. And you're really going to tell me that can't happen? You're going to tell me that to my face? You're going to do that? Are you? Are you? Anyway, that just about covers my thoughts on The Rise of Skywalker. It was a very enjoyable film, which I would like very much to see again. Obviously, I have my nitpicks, but then so does every other Star Wars fan on the planet. And it seems that I have less than the fans, and I'm glad about that, because I haven't enjoyed seeing the fandom be angry and divided and upset for the last couple of years. So I'm glad that there is a positive feeling around this one. And I feel like I have to say, as this is the last film that he's doing, what a great job John Williams has done for these 9 films. Already there is a track from this new one that I'm in love with. There's always at least one track that I fall in love with from each of these films. John Williams is Star Wars. He has made these movies more than any individual person, I think. And we should all Star Wars fans should be massively grateful to him. So that about covers it. I would very much love to hear what some of you have to say. So do sort of mention what you thought of the movie in the comments. Until next time, have a very Merry Christmas, and may the Force be with you, always.